was this rolling stone, and God saw this, but God said, okay. Now understand where I'm coming from. You turn with me to Romans chapter 8, verse 14. And this is where the topic basically comes from. Romans 8, chapter 14, we're going to read down. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. For ye did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ. If indeed we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together. For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of this creation eagerly awaits for the revealing of the sons of God. Back to verse 15. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear. When you received the Spirit from God, he did not give you spirit to bondage, but again, not to fear again, but to fear. He said, but you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Father, Abba, Father. Paul begins to talk to the Roman church and understand who the Roman church is. The Roman church were people full of Gentiles. The Roman Empire was the most world. He was a world power at this time. He had oppressed Israel and brought Israel under his control. And all nations feared the Roman Empire. We get Tobias Caesar, Julius Caesar, all types of people at this time who are the dominant figures in our historical perspective of the world. Now understand that this Roman church were taught by the Jews, and Jews lived in Rome. Now understand that Paul himself, who was Saul of Tarsus, is from Rome, from the tribe of Benjamin. Now understand that Rome is considered to be a nation, a people who are full of sin. And if you begin to read the book of Romans, Paul begins to tell them that your ways are not of God's ways, that there is no excuse no longer, for God has sent his son Jesus down here to die for us and to resurrect for us. Paul begins to tell the Roman church that there is no one righteous. Paul begins to tell the Roman church that God will put the wise men to shame, and he will put the fool to shame, and that their wisdom is stupidity to God. He begins to talk to this Roman church. Okay? He begins to talk to the Roman church. Paul says, Christ came down here in the form of us. The Word became flesh. And the Word walked amongst us for 33 years, because for many years God has been trying to get his sons and his daughters back. He gave them the sacrifices to do, yet they polluted it. He gave them the laws to do, but all the laws did was work death. And all the laws did was make the other, abuse the other. What the laws did was put the highs up here and the lows down there. What the law did was bring a problem. And God says, I got to do something. Isaiah says this: will God abandon you? Can a nursing mother leave her child? Yes, but the Lord won't. For all this time you have been in sin, God has been saying, I need to get you back. I need my son back. Why? Because my son needs me. My son may look like he's okay. He may look like everything is going fine with his life, but he needs me. So God becomes man. He becomes us to feel, to see how we feel. You're going through a tough time in your life. You're going through a very tough time and you're trying to figure out what is going on. Your life is not going right. But God has said the adoption is approved. When he came down here as man and he hung up on that cursed tree, died and resurrected. Not only that, God gave us back his spirit. Okay? Now, Paul begins to talk to the church. He says, do you not know that you are now adopted? Do you not know that the connection that you once lost with God, God has brought it back? God has made a way through his son to get back to you. This was man and this was God and this was sin. But when Jesus came, he moved sin out of the way. He moved death out of the way. And now I can talk with God through his son's name. Because every time he sees me, he sees his son. So Paul says to them that, he said, children, Roman children. He's talking to a church of people, okay? Romans, Gentiles, who are not of the lineage of Abraham, who understood what it felt like to be on the outside, who understood what it felt like not to be loved, who understood what it felt like not to be wanted. He says, don't you understand? You have God's Spirit, and you are now his children. And understand why Paul's talking to them like this, because at this time, the Jews are trying to bring back circumcision. They're trying to inflict the Mosaic laws, and they're trying to oppress the Gentiles. And Paul comes to work all of that, because this begins to make the Gentiles feel out of place. Have you ever felt like someone's trying to make you feel less of a person? That God doesn't love you? They tell you if you don't follow the rules and God doesn't love you. And this was what the Jews were doing to the Gentiles. And Paul says, Paul states to the church that those who have God's Spirit are his children. He says, the day you accepted Christ as your Savior and you were baptized in his name, God's Spirit came and lived in you, which makes you his child. John 14:15 says, me and my Father will come make our home with you. We will come live with you. As me and my Father are one, so will me and you be one. Okay? So Paul says to you, he says to me, no matter what your mama say, no matter what your daddy say, no matter what the world says, what the social media say, what the preacher says, what the minister says, what the congressman says, what the police say, no matter what no one says, what the devil says, God says, my Spirit lives in you. You are my child. I went through a lot of legal things to get you. A lot of pain, a lot of agony to get you. I went through a lot of sleepless nights where I had to pray in the earth to get you. I went to rejection by my own people just to get you. And if you continue to allow the world to tell you that you are nothing, that God does not love you, you begin to live that and allow that to happen, God says, what was the point of me being here? What was the point of me being here? Okay? Paul says to the church, he says, we were once in bondage. When we came out of the garden into the world, we was in bondage. And we feared our end greatly. We lived in fear. So when a person lives in fear, they make stupid choices. But Paul says to them, you are not given the spirit of bondage to fear again. But you have been adopted through the Spirit. The Spirit says, you are my son. The Spirit is a new name given unto you. The Spirit says, that's my child. That's God's child. The Spirit says, this is God's daughter. She's no longer a prostitute. He's no longer a thief. He's no longer a castaway. This is God's son. Stop it.